certain marketing companies became very complacent in how they did it. It's very cookie cutter, it's very generic, it's not effective. This practice is a hungry hippo for eating up all-on-4 cases, because you'll get caught and you'll look dumb. If you have that nice office, you better know what you're doing, because how are you going to pay for it?
Today's guest built Montana's most trusted full-arch practice from the ground up, in a market most dentists would overlook. He's placed over 6,000 implants, runs multiple locations across Montana, and has created the kind of practice culture that patients drive hours to experience and team members never want to leave. By the end of this episode, you're going to hear what it actually takes to build a high-volume full-arch practice in a small market. Dr. Winterholler graduated top 10% of his class at Creighton University, briefly taught there as a faculty member, and then came home to Montana and never looked back. He's a Nobel BioCare All-on-4 Center of Excellence, runs an on-site dental lab, and has built something in Billings that most major metro practices would envy. Dr. Winterholler, thank you, and welcome to the Full Arch Growth Show. So let's just start kind of conversationally. I'd love to hear a little bit more about you and the practice that you've built. Or should I call it almost an empire there in Montana?
Yeah, I'm honored to have you say that. It's just something that's just happened. I mean, at least I would like to say that. Of course, there's been some intentionality to it, right? But yeah, I love Montana. I went to high school here. I decided to come back here after dental school. When I was in school, I didn't really know what I wanted to focus on. My dad was an oral surgeon. I have an uncle that's a dentist, lots of relatives that were dentists too. That's kind of led me into the field of dentistry. Actually, I applied to an orthodontic residency and an oral surgery residency. I got accepted into an oral surgery residency, but just had a kid and was like, I don't know that I want to do another 6 years of education. I talked to my dad on the phone and he said, well, just come on back to Billings. I'll teach you everything you want to know about oral surgery and you can do the GP side of things if you want. I was very interested in doing general dentistry because as a surgeon, you don't get to see the end result. So I really wanted to be able to do that.
That makes a lot of sense. When you moved back to Billings in 2006, full arch implants weren't really mainstream at that point. When did you decide that this was going to be kind of a focus of yours?
I was very interested in implants. Started off doing implant overdentures and whatnot. And then my uncle down in Arizona was starting to really kind of get involved in the early days of all-on-4. And when I saw him do it and talk about it, I thought, oh man, I got to try this. So it was way back in the ultra analog days and no one hardly knew what a multi-unit abutment was, but we started to do it.
Yeah, wonderful. You've placed around 6,000 implants, but what still excites you about this procedure?
Definitely the end result. But beyond that, of course, what gets us into implants or anything like that is I think everybody kind of finds a niche. And what I like about implants is somewhat the challenge of it. I like the technological side of it now, especially. It's just such an awesome field as it just continues to evolve and provide better and better results for people.
Yeah. What does your digital workflow look like right now? Like, what's your process?
So we are fully digital. Having done this for 20 years, we used to be obviously fully analog, and I think that helped in the digital process, but also kind of hindered us somewhat because we were slow to really adapt and adopt like we should. But right now we're fully digital. So we've done a bunch of different things, some of which have stuck and some of which have not, but intraoral scanners for sure, obviously CBCT. We do some occasional segmented 3D printed models. We don't do anything really guided unless it's occasionally we do some zygomas guided, but we get the patient in, we have a consult, we take them directly into the records phase, we take intraoral scans, we work with a lab that does the designing for us, and then everything with photogrammetry all the way to the end, all digital, 3D printing, milling, everything.
Is there anything you feel like tech-wise, just since we're on the subject of technology, is maybe a bit of a fad and something you think really isn't worth bringing into the office and won't last?
Yeah. And somebody might argue this, but just for me, it didn't work. We bought ArrayFace and we looked at all the other devices like ArrayFace, giving that three-dimensional picture to the lab technicians. We probably should have just talked to the lab guys first because they're like, we don't need that. Certainly it's a little bit helpful, but it's another step and it takes time and taking the ArrayFace and sending it out. And so if you take really good photos, that's what the lab technician's looking for, the designer.
I think it's a good point because like you said, you're not dogging on anyone, but when doctors are getting into this, it's a huge expense. So I think it's important for them to know, what are the essentials and what can they kind of live without.
Yeah, I've made every mistake there is in buying equipment. So if anybody needs my number, they can text me and I'll tell them, no, don't do it, so.
You don't have to say the brand, but, talk to me about a few other mistakes that you feel like, people should avoid.
That's a good one there. Again, I think this is a debatable topic to some degree because everybody finds what works for them. But I bought a device that allowed for 3D planning and then assisted placement. It was just too difficult. It was in the way all the time. So now it sits in the basement and collects dust.
Now, what technology are you excited about that maybe you haven't adopted yet? Something you feel like is here to stay and it might be on the horizon for you?
I think we pretty much buy everything that comes out, or at least research it. And I think it's going to be nice when the photogrammetry and intraoral scan stuff, which it's already there. It depends on which system you're using. We're still using photogrammetry, but it'll be nice when another step is cut out, where you're not having necessarily to take a separate photogrammetry scan. I think that'll be really nice. And again, I know people are already doing that. I'm just not doing that yet.
Yeah. Have you put much thought into of how AI might impact the dental office? And it's okay if you haven't.
No, I tried to dive into the AI thing pretty hard in regards to what it can do for us, both from a front office perspective all the way back to the back office. I use AI personally right now, and I highly advise people to do this. At least for me, it's been sort of game changing. I record all my consults with an AI device, and then it creates a summary, and then I upload that. And it's really useful to be able to go back and reference what was said with the patient. And I think it's also good for us to remind the patient as well and be able to show them like, hey, this is what we talked about. A lot of All on 4 is delivering on expectations and also setting expectations. In the clinical side of AI, and I can't wait to see what it's going to do for us. I think it's going to make designs better and faster and help us maybe see things ahead of time, particularly if you're doing really good case planning.
Yeah, I love that. I have this little note taker that I bring around to conferences. We obviously encourage folks to record their consultations for sales coaching reasons. For whatever reason, because I'm not in the clinical side, I'd never thought about the application of being able to take just significantly more detailed notes and reference back. One thing that we do is we will run those notes and video back into AI and have it roast our team on the call center side or on the sales side, and just be brutally honest. How could we improve on the sales process? And I think we've obviously learned a lot from that kind of input.
Yeah, and those are hard things to accept, that especially if something's working, you think, why change it, right? It's sort of the enemy of good is perfect, but I think the enemy of good is complacency. So you have to always be kind of evaluating and trying to improve, right?
I love that. And I think one thing over here at the Implant Engine that we've maybe in the early days struggled with balance is we're a very innovation forward team. And I think that's a really good thing, but sometimes you can move almost too quickly. I was listening to a podcast with Jeff Bezos and he was talking about this concept of a one-way door or a two-way door. And that sort of changed everything for me. The two-way door being something that you can move quickly on and easily kind of return if it's not quite right or doesn't pan out like you'd expect. A one-way door being something that would be really hard to come back from. Okay, that would be like a big purchase of a piece of equipment, right? So for us here at the Implant Engine, and maybe this would be helpful for someone listening, if it's a one-way door, then the amount of research and planning and documentation that goes into that decision is significantly larger than a two-way door. And that allows you to be like, is this a one-way door or two-way door? And if it's a two-way door, then my team can be nimble without really having to go up the ladder and I don't need to hear about it and stuff like that. But if it's a one-way door, then it involves more of the team. But I think for some folks, change is hard and this industry is ripe with change. And I think if you're not able to change, then I think you get left behind a little bit.
Oh yeah, you got to hold on tight because you'll get left behind very quickly.
Absolutely. One thing that really stood out to me as I've kind of gotten to know you through your videos and things is when you've been asked about what makes successful implant dentistry, what makes a successful dental implant surgery, most doctors default to technique, clinical technique, and you default to team. And there's something about you and your team that is special. And I think that comes out in those interviews. So talk to me about how you've built the team culture that you've built.
Well, I haven't always had that. So that's part of the whole process of evolving. I'm happy to say that we do now, but we haven't always had that. Some of it came out of necessity. It's like, if you're going to grow the right way, then you have to have the right people. And the right people doesn't always mean spending the most money to hire the right talent. It just means hiring the right talent. And beyond that, a good team culture is obviously everybody has to be passionate. That's like the number one thing. I think one of the big things that gets overlooked is my team knows I have their back and I know they have my back. And we really practice a lot of the over here psychology stuff too. So a lot of the messages that we're telling our patients, I'll name one of my team members. I know that Blake is going to tell a patient about a question that they may ask about their treatment, whether it's pre-treatment or post-treatment. She's going to tell them the exact same thing that I'm going to tell them. And if she doesn't have an answer, she's going to get me and I'm going to tell them, and then she's going to back that up. It's very important for patients to have that. From a clinical side, everybody knows their role and has to know their role, but they also kind of have to know someone else's role, because ultimately it's going to happen. Someone gets sick, they can't come into work for whatever reason, or they get busy, or ultimately we're going to be in a high stress situation, and a patient that we did surgery on 2 weeks ago is going to have a broken temporary, and that person's going to have to leave the room and go handle that. So it's super important that the team is supportive of one another and passionate and trying to adopt and adapt to the new
And how do you
stuff.
get everyone on the same page like that? Because it sounds like you guys almost have an unspoken language there at the office, but I'm sure it wasn't always that way. How did you guys arrive at that?
Number one is fitting people into the right spot. So, I mean, I have somewhat of an advantage in that our practice is not just all on four focused. It is very all on four focused, but there's two other providers. So we have a lot of staff. And so you kind of see people come in and they start to shine, and then we start to really bring them up because you see that they have a passion rather than they're just here for a paycheck, if that makes sense. And so we've sort of elevated people as they've started to elevate themselves into the right roles, and every one of them just fits in where they're supposed to, and they do their job well.
Yeah, so I think a little bit of what you're saying is you're getting to know your team well enough to know what their passions are, and and helping nurture those passions, even if it's not what you brought them in for
Yeah,
originally.
some people just have it. They just have that. They're great at communicating, or they're great at communicating and or understanding the clinical workflow. Everybody's got to be a good communicator to be on a team like this, but some people are better at communicating and some people are better at the technological side of it.
What's your best leadership advice? Your team loves to work there. So obviously you're a great leader. What do you think your best leadership advice is for, say, a new dentist that's just coming into a practice? Maybe they purchase an existing practice or
I think
something.
out of necessity, from growing a practice from scratch, I just opened the doors here 20 years ago. You have to be able to lead by example, and you have to know all the roles. So I think the lead by example is the most important part. There's no patient interaction, patient situation, clinical situation that I can't jump into and wouldn't jump into to have the back of that person who needs the help or whatever. So again, it's that sort of mutual support that I think is so vital to that.
Yeah. Is there anything in practice that you've implemented to let them know that you have their back in terms of pay structures or bonuses? What does that look like in practice, apart from just saying
We
it?
have certain people that are in different leadership roles here, and we do have a group of individuals who are involved on the highest levels of what we do get a bonus, and of course it's a nice bonus, and so they're highly motivated. But not everybody's motivated by that. Some people are motivated more by the attaboys and the thank yous and the pats on the back. Everybody still likes some extra bucks at the end of the day, but a lot of people, I think it's a lot about saying, hey, I really appreciate what you did today, or thank you for helping me with that. Maybe a patient's frustrated about something and they're not clearly understanding what we discussed sort of in the preoperative situation. And I don't really have to troubleshoot it because the assistant or the front office person that is my right hand in this has already taken that down a notch. And then that over here psychology thing comes into play. If I end up having to follow up with the patient and I'm saying the same things and they're hearing it again and they're going, okay, maybe I do remember that from the conversation or the consultation.
Yeah, and that shorthand that you guys have, I'm sure that's just gotten better and better over time. Do you guys do daily huddles? Is there within particularly the implant world of the practice, what kind of meetings are you having to get on the same page about stuff?
Yeah, we have a huddle every single day. We also have a timeout every morning before the case starts. So we have a whiteboard in the surgery room, and usually it's mostly filled out by the time I get in there. But as soon as the patient's sedated and ready to go, we have a quick timeout. And these aren't all my ideas. I'm not special in that regard. Some of these things are things that people have suggested and we've implemented and found them to work really well, so that the communication is tightened up and the notes are dialed in and all of those things.
What are the essential takeaways from a huddle and a timeout?
In a pre-surgical situation, so we do a morning huddle. So we go through the schedule for the day. It's not long, it's 15 minutes and it's right before we start seeing patients. Everybody is supposed to come prepared for that meeting, and for the most part they do. Cloud-based software has really changed the game for me. I'm able to at night go through notes from the previous day, notes on the upcoming day, try to be prepared for the meeting, because if you're prepared, then the meeting goes a lot better and the information flows faster. It's really about just getting everybody on the same page. Oftentimes there's some little bit of information that you might remember from a certain patient that they don't, that's going to really
Mm,
help them when they go into the
sure.
room. We do a lot of dentistry in our all-on-fours stuff where our assistants are working very independently. It doesn't mean that we're not checking the boxes like we should as a provider, but there are situations where the assistant is handling, 90% of the appointment, and I'm in there just for 10% of the
Mm.
appointment. There's a lot of relevant data that needs to be relayed about each patient before you see them.
I think it goes back to you leading by example. You're reviewing the notes every night and you're coming prepared. So it would be pretty awkward if you were prepared and they weren't, right? So that is another area where you walk the walk.
You have to, because you'll get caught and you'll look dumb. And it's okay occasionally when things are going sideways in life and you're busy or you just come back from vacation. But for the most part, you got to be leading by example, be the most knowledgeable guy in the room if you can be. And then you're forgiven when you don't remember a certain situation or you didn't have time to read something.
And I think another thing I want to highlight from what you said is I just noticed how you said, some people aren't motivated by money. And it just comes back to the fact that it seems like you really know your team well, to the point where you know what they're motivated by. So you're going to have team members where maybe words of affirmation and attaboys are a big thing for them. So you're really paying attention to your team in a way that I think maybe a lot of providers, they're sort of caught up in the day to day and not really paying attention to their team as well as they should be. Now, I just want to talk about the practice a little bit, because when I look at the videos, there's an energy. It almost seems fun.
Mhm.
Like the dental office seems fun. I mean, I didn't see a ping pong table or anything, but to the degree where if I went to the website, I would want to go there. And how much of this is just who you are as a person? Did you kind of seek this out intentionally? Did it just sort of happen, this fun element of the
I mean, I
practice?
think it happened and I think it evolved beyond that. So I don't wear scrubs. I wear a scrub top, but I wear jeans. I'm just comfortable in jeans. I'm more comfortable in jeans than I am in scrubs. And so that gives a little bit of a casual feel, but everybody knows when it's time to be professional, and we are professional at all times. But yeah, all of our offices, I feel like we've tried to create not necessarily the ping pong table atmosphere, but an atmosphere in our main office. It's 10,000 square feet. We've got a whole upper floor that has nothing to do with clinical. It's just an area where we have some very awesome spaces, a big TV, some couches, a really nice break area for a lot of the employees take a nap over lunch. So we do take a lunch. I think that's super important for me anyways. I know a lot of people don't, but it allows us the ability to wind down a little bit for a minute and then wind back up and get a little bit of a reset and a refresh. We are sarcastic and we joke around a lot, but we have a very professional and warm and inviting and beautifully designed and decorated office to exude the confidence and help patients feel that, hey, these guys know what they're doing because this place is put together.
And you think a key to your success is kind of how your practice looks and feels as well.
Yeah, early on when I started 20 years ago, I interviewed with a couple of dentists here in town, and I looked at buying their practices, and they were old, dilapidated, crusty. And I met with three different bankers in town, and the first two shot me down because I said, "Hey, I want X amount of dollars." I think at the time I was asking for 600 grand, and I didn't even have a single patient. And I met with a banker here in town who was awesome. She was like, "Yeah, I get it. That sounds great. I love it." So they gave me the money, and we built a brand new, beautiful office. And a lot of people right off the bat were like, "You build a really nice office. Everybody's going to come in and say, I'm paying for this guy's nice office." You know what I mean? But I don't think that's true. I don't think patients feel that way. I think patients want to feel like they're going to the guy who has the nicest office because it's comfortable. And because if you have that nice office, you better know what you're doing, because how are you going to pay for it?
Yeah, totally. And I know not everyone, we have plenty of thriving full arch docs that are in more outdated buildings, and it's not a requirement. But I do think that when given the option, it sounds like it's been beneficial to both of you to have that new building, and it's made a massive impact on your business as a whole.
Well, you talked about culture earlier and team. People like to go to a nice place to work. They like to be proud of where they work. We have nice swag that our employees have, and they're proud to wear it. We've got some kind of custom tailored hoodies that they wear, and they're really nice. I don't like to give out cheap stuff because then you just waste your money. Nobody wears wears it. But the same is said about the office. I like coming to a nice place to work. I don't enjoy going to a old crusty building. I've done a few things with a few docs where I've gone in and helped them out with something. We've got a few, as a GP, we have a few referring GPs. So it's nice when you come back home to realize how good you have it.
Yeah, totally. I'm sure it was a risk going into it, looking at that. You were pretty young, looking at that $600,000 loan. It seems to have been the foundation that's paid off for you to truly create your own thing from the ground up.
I remember the payment to the penny every month, and it was stressful, but we did it and it paid off.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You've done so much right, but everyone has things they look back on and they think I should have done that differently. If there's anything you can think of that you would do differently in this journey, specifically implants, but really anything practice journey, what would that be?
Well, I think I would have done a lot of these things that we've already talked about sooner in regards to the team and building the team and building the right team. Not that that's an easy thing to do overnight, right? That takes time. Certainly some of the equipment things I would have cut out. I would have adapted or adopted, even though I've told you how I've adopted every piece of equipment that I could when it came out. I was a little slow to adopt the digital workflow, and I would have done that quicker. And I was also a little slow to adopt the marketing. I would tell you that I definitely would have done more marketing sooner than I did. But, marketing carries an expense to it, and no one likes to rebuild their website or pay a camera guy to come in and sit and talk to patients initially, especially because you're like, is this going to pay off? But when you capture the emotion of the testimonials and things like that, and then you pump it back out into the community through marketing, it's huge. It really solidifies and ties it all together. Your marketing with your building, with your team, the services you provide.
Yeah, where do you think that implant dentistry is headed? What 5 years, 10 years, what opportunities do you think are going to present themselves?
Well, you look at the market for implant dentistry, everyone is trying to do implant dentistry. You know what I mean? Obviously, I think the technology is going to improve. I think some of these things we talked about, certain steps are going to be cut out. But if you don't have the education, if you don't have the experience, if you don't have a little bit of the swagger, to be honest, a little bit of all these components that we've put into place in our conversation, you're gonna have some hurt. And I think we're gonna see, particularly when you get into the social media side of things and you look at what other guys are doing out there, I think we're gonna see the complexity of these cases actually increase. You think the dental IQ is increasing out there and less people need this, but more and more people need it. And there's going to be a lot of revision cases. I tell my younger associate doc here who does quite a bit of all on X with me, you have to really be better than I am because you're going to have to do a lot of revision cases from people all over the place.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that seems to be a common theme. Winter is coming. It's actually really sad to a degree, but it does present an opportunity that, the more skilled the doc is, the better they're going to be at being able to handle some of this influx. That's interesting. So let's talk numbers a little bit. I was just reviewing our numbers together. In 4 months, you've done 127 consultations, spent around 35,000 in ad spend, and generated about 600 in revenue. That's about a 17.5x return. When you see those numbers, what has that meant for your practice day to day since we came on?
Well, first of all, your people would probably tell you that those numbers are a little low because initially we weren't really great at moving the patients over. So I would tell you we've done better than that. And that's not me trying to flex or something. I'm just saying like it's been that good. And so what that means for our practice is this practice is a hungry hippo for eating up all on four cases. And we thrive on that. We love that. Our team is built around that, even though I say we're a GP practice at the core, but it is all on X that really makes the place shine in regards to what we can do for our team. Obviously, people need to be paid and make money and marketing costs and things like that. So it's peace of mind and security and just daily satisfaction in being able to do the kinds of things we love to do.
Yeah, it's wonderful. You were working with a marketing company before us. What was that situation like?
Well, I've been through 5 different marketing companies before you guys, and I have to give credit where credit is due. Somebody recommended you to me, and I was at the time back with a marketing company that I had left before and then came back to because at least they were okay. But, because we started marketing, I would say in the earlier days of marketing for All on Four, it was a little bit easier back then. But certain marketing companies whose names will stay out of our mouths right now became very complacent in how they did it. And it's very cookie cutter, it's very generic, and it's not effective. So really what matters is getting good leads. That's where the previous marketing companies have lacked being able to get us good leads.
What's the lead quality been like since we started together?
It's been awesome based on numbers. Our worst 3 months in the last 5 years were the 3 months before we brought you guys in. And the best 4 months I've had in 5 years, just with our all on X case generation, has been since we brought Implant Engine into play in our practice. And now that's obviously true because we've now adopted it in one of our other practices. And we do a lot of other all on X that comes by referral, but just the component of stuff coming in off of marketing is so huge for us because that's probably 80% or 75% of the all on X cases that we do is through marketing, not just referral based and organic stuff. So yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Last question here. What would you say to someone who is on the fence about working with us?
Well, I would tell them you guys are terrible because I don't want the competition. Uh, so I would say the thing that you guys bring to the table that is different than what a lot of other marketing groups have is you listen, which is very important. I feel like you have presented our practice in the way that we would want it presented. I feel like you've used our content. I feel like the regular check-ins most people don't do. And I think that's crucial and vital to whether we're receiving feedback from you or you're receiving feedback from us. I think that constant evaluation, conversation, desire to improve, I think is huge. Based on what we've already talked about, if someone doesn't think I'm going to refer you to them, then they're nuts. I would say it's been the best business decision I've made in the last year, for sure.
Love it. Thank you for saying that. Well, this conversation was really fun. It went in a different direction than a lot of my conversations have, and I think it was just getting an insight into really who you are as a leader because I think it's really something unique and maybe you don't see it because you're in it, but with 140 docs on our roster, I know that what you're building over there is really unique. So I hope that anyone listening takes your advice here today because it's really something special. Thank you for your time. If anyone wanted to reach out with any kind of questions, would you be open to that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can always learn something from talking to people. Sometimes people reach out, just even regionally. Our implant rep has somebody reach out for a question, and I find that I learn more from talking to them maybe than they did from me. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.